Assalamu alaikum, ladies and gentlemen. Assalamu alaikum, boys and girls. We are here live and late. In fact, we are about an hour behind schedule at this point, but that is because we are dealing with modern technology and modern technology making our lives better since the 1970s. Yay! We want to thank you all for joining us this evening live on Facebook as we record our Raw Islam with Imam Azhar podcast. And, because we are late and because we are so far behind schedule already, which I will take full responsibility for because I was updating software that wouldn't update, I'm going to go ahead and just throw it right over to the hardest working Imam that I know, Imam Azhar.
Assalamu alaikum. We welcome you all this evening to our listeners across the globe here on Facebook Live and on YouTube. Tonight we are going to be discussing in our episode of Raw Islam something which has taken up much of our time and the time and thoughts of people across this nation and across the globe. I always tell Carl that our discussion should be productive, something that leads us to something better, which helps us on our daily and weekly goals, and allows us to bring forth goodness from within. But periodically we have to stop on that path and address certain issues that become hindrances or hurdles on that path only so that we can seek out clarity and thus move forward with more confidence. Today we have a topic that I think is of great importance. It will highlight how to understand things in their context in a nation where we have separation of church and state. I think that will play a great role in guiding our discussion tonight. But before we move into that, inshallah, by the will of God, I want to give it back to Carl for him to tell us that what the weekly poll was and what was the response from you, the listeners, for tonight's discussion. Brother Carl?
Sorry, just doing some technical stuff on my end. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you may or may not be aware, every week on our Twitter page, which is VennNetwork.org, we post a poll on Mondays that we encourage all of you to go and take part in and to vote in, because it is that poll that drives the conversation of the day, of the evening. We want to talk about things that interest you and that engage you. So head over to Twitter, follow us, Venn Network, VENNNETWORK. And this week's poll was: are Muslims anti-Semitic? What's up with Venezuela? Let's see. Can I wear blackface? And Black History Month. So we want to thank all of you that voted in that and all of you that took part in this poll. And as you can see, if you're watching the video, if you're not, I'm going to go ahead and tell you what happened. But as you can see, tonight you as our guests and as our fans, you want to discuss, are Muslims anti-Semitic? That is what you guys are interested in, and that is what we're going to talk about tonight. And before I throw it back to Imam Azhar, I just would like to point out real quickly that he is a touch under the weather this evening, which is why you're not going to see him when we're showing a picture of him, because he's a very beautiful individual. So staring at a picture of him while he imparts his knowledge on us is just as good. So we should consider ourselves blessed in this manner. So I have told you about this week's poll. I have told you about what the topic is. Here's Imam Azhar again.
Well, thank you, Brother Carl, and thank you to our listeners for their understanding, their patience. And again, the technical delay tonight was a frustrating one, but nevertheless, it is part and parcel of the world that we live in today. I was really thinking that the discussion that would, catch the polls for this week would be the ongoing scandals of blackface. What are the origins of blackface? I was thinking about it this week, and I recall that as a child, when we used to watch cartoons on Saturday and Sunday morning, there was a cartoon figure, and it's vaguely in my head. I'm trying to understand, was it with Warner Brothers or what? A blackface individual, and it has the same mask of a dark black complexion with thick red lips. Um, and I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm hopefully going to find out the root of where this was, because I saw it as a child and I recall it vividly. Carl, do you have something on your head on that?
I think I could be wrong on this, but I vaguely remember something with Bugs Bunny, who would be Warner Brothers, but I also remember growing up and Little Black Sambo from Disney. God bless them and their racist bunch over there.
Well, again, everything has a message, and I think that message was articulated very clearly back in the days to normalize such act from the Virginia governor and other people. We have a lot to discuss tonight. Unfortunately, this year, during our Black History Month, I think we're in week 2, I don't foresee that we will be discussing that this week, but possibly we'll discuss it next week. Moving along, a topic of discussion that has pulled time from the airwaves, engaged Muslims and the greater community in somewhat fierce discussions, is the topic that came up earlier this week when Ilhan Omar, who is a new congresswoman, had tweeted in regards to Follow the Benjamins baby, which basically was in regard to the funding of Israel and America's support of the Israeli government, i.e. in its finances. I want us all tonight to understand the context of the discussion and for us to answer the many questions that are lingering and stemming from this tweet and the tweet that preceded this tweet, and the engagement that followed these tweets. I want us to stay in very specific lanes as we try to figure this out. The first question that we want to address was the question of the poll, and that was, are Muslims anti-Semitic? And the answer is very simple. No. Islam does not advocate hatred, does not promote animosity, ill feelings, harboring ill thoughts of anyone based on their religion, their race, or their identity. This is a very clear-cut teaching in our Islam, even though many may not understand it to be so. But the fact is, it is. And even though you may know something about someone, we cannot use their religion as a means to smear them and their identity, taking their religion down with them. Let me give you a brief understanding of what I'm trying to say. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had an uphill battle when it came to propagating the message of monotheism in a land where polytheism was the norm. He was not out to demonize the idols. He was out to restore and solidify the oneness of God in the people of that land. In pursuit of his mission, there were some who were kind of playing a dual role. They were kind of showing him face that they were committed to him, but then they were flipping around and showing the others that they were committed to them. They were known as the hypocrites. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was divinely informed of the hypocrites and who they were, but he never spoke about them. He never spoke ill of them in a manner to call them out. So I'm using the hypocrite analogy only to highlight a fact, and the fact is, as Muslims and Islam, we do not hate a person or a people because of their race, their culture, their religion, or anything else that they identify themselves with. And that includes being an anti-Semite, being racist, being prejudiced, being xenophobic, being homophobic. Islam does not promote this. And if there's anyone out there listening tonight that disagrees with me, I call on them to send me their proof from the text. Moving forward, what happened here is a continuation and a trend of politics. And I want to pull back and address point number 2. Recall in the beginning of the show I said we live in a land of separation of church and state. So the church, i.e. the mosque in this scenario, is very clear. We do not demonize a people because of their faith. And truth be told, brothers and sisters, the Jewish brethren are the ones who Allah had blessed with almost all the prophets that came. And they are the people who were blessed with continuous reminder about them. There's continuous discussion about them in the Holy Quran. So there's times where Allah highlights those who believed, and Allah highlights those who disbelieved or disobeyed Prophet Moses and the Lord, peace be upon all of them. So that being said, our hatred towards them is unfounded, has no roots. It is not something that's within the religion. But that being said, we want to talk about politics and how people can take a political stance to mean that your religion is advocating for this. In light of separation of church and state, politics is something where we engage solely because we want our nation to be upright and to follow the ideals and principles it stands for, to serve the people of the nation in a manner that they ought to be served by those who are elected, not selected to serve, and so that we can prosper as a nation and be an example to the world. Very, very simple, context of what politics is. That is why we can sign petitions. We can go and talk to our fellow representatives in government. We can call the White House. We can send a letter to the president. And that's what our democracy is about. That we can engage with our leaders because our leaders are engaging with us for one common goal. There is a lot of problem in this tweet, and I want to stop on this and just talk about 2 things. Number 1, the Muslim community has been fixated on the Palestinian issue in a manner that to me is somewhat disturbing. We are more emotional than we are rational. For Ilhan Omar to be the congresswoman and to bring up this discussion, especially I understand under the policy in debate of the BDS, the divisive sanctions, I understand what was happening in that context. But for this to be an issue that took away so much energy and time wasn't called for. We have more greater crisis with the current tax cuts that are benefiting the rich and sinking the poor more into poverty, healthcare crisis, food prices are going up, insecurity and instability in our economy. There are more important things, in my opinion, that needed to be discussed, and this shouldn't have been the discussion that we've been engaging in for the last 48 hours, or not 72 hours. The president has called for her resignation, meaning this has become more than just a national conversation. Now it's becoming a global conversation. Again, it's imperative to understand matters and issues within their context. And those issues can be debated and discussed state by state. And it can be contested, but it has sucked up more energy than it needed. So it shouldn't have been. It shouldn't have been the front and center conversation as it is amongst many Muslims, and they believe this to be the conversation. Number 2, whatever differences lie between Israel and Palestine, and of course America's involvement and American aid involvement to both Palestinians, Israelis, and Pakistan, and Egypt, and other countries around the world, regardless of the disproportion of the funds that are being allocated and the resources that are being allocated, we need not to take politics to smear people of a religion, just as some may consider America's funding to Israel to be illegitimate sending of our funds to them, and thus the Jewish people are wrong. There are people who may say that American taxpayer dollars being sent to Egypt, or until recently Pakistan, is an unlawful allocation of resources, and thus the Muslim people are wrong. You cannot mix the two in. We cannot put down a people because of what the government decides to do. There's a protocol and procedure how we engage with government in a lawful, ethical manner, and we will continue to do that. But we have to stop becoming emotional over issues that we feel doesn't suit our ways, doesn't suit our ideas, doesn't suit our code of ethics. We just have to stop that. And my third point, before I give it back to Carl, because I still have to discuss the church, the state from the church. We kind of discussed the church. The third point is to all those Muslims who are on the bandwagon of the Democrats. You need to stop. Because I'll tell you something, and for those who want to criticize me, I'm open tonight for that. I worked under Republicans from 2004 under President Bush. I worked with Governor Bush. I've had the opportunity to also engage with the Bernie Sanders campaign and also work alongside with the Hillary Clinton campaign. I've worked across the board regardless of the party affiliation. And my personal experience is I've found a more conducive environment of working with a Republican than it was with a Democrat. That's my personal experience. But what I'm trying to say here tonight is that it's not about the lines and it's not about the color. Because we found that even the people that we are standing behind and applauding and cheering on, like Nancy Pelosi and the rest, are the ones who are actually instrumental in putting Ilhan Omar down, also calling her out. There is no party lines when it comes to certain issues and topics. So when you vote, you should not vote based on party. You should vote on the person that's being selected or elected to serve your state, your city, your town, or your country. It should not be red or blue only. Those lines need to be broken. So all the Muslims who are on the Democratic bandwagon tonight, Democrat Muslims for America, where are the Republican Muslims for America? When you fail to engage on both sides because of the core values that they hold for the sake of this nation, you are failing. You are failing greatly. And if you don't believe me, look back at the history of the Democratic Party and tell me where some of the problems that are rooted in our past, where did it stem from? Carl?
Well, I really don't know how to follow that, and I mean that on multiple levels, because for me, and I know maybe I'll say what's on my mind and I'll throw it back to you because it'll be the perfect setup for you. Because I know this whole issue, one of the things that I'm struggling with, and honestly I've been struggling with it for more than a year now at this point, is there is a difference between a state or a government entity and the policies and rules that are put into place and a religious theology and a religious group. There is a stark difference. And for me, this whole thing boils down to the simple point that addressing a policy issue is not insulting a religious theology or a religious idea or a religious group. And that is the distinction that is hurting my brain. I can't fathom the idea that I am the only person that sees this and I am the only person that understands this. Now, I get that I'm the white American male, and I get that I have grown up here in a country where I'm privileged to be able to log on to Facebook, to do a podcast like this with such a wonderful person like yourself and be able to say, my government may not be doing everything right, and here's what could be doing better, and not have a fear of repercussion of some military state police busting in my door overnight. I don't live in that fear, and I'm blessed for that, and I'm not stupid. I get that. But for me to insult the state or the government or a policy, again, is not addressing a religious group. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and I want to answer that because you've hit the nail on the head on one aspect of the discussion, which I was going to go towards.
I told you I was setting you up.
And you hit it right. So basically, when we, as Americans, where we have grown up and understood the privilege and the opportunity that we have at our disposal to have freedom of speech, which is a blessing because many countries around the world don't have that blessing. They just have to remain silent. And here we're not doing it as a threat because that is considered terrorism. You're not doing it to harm a people. That's against the law. It's just discussions, because if we don't engage in discussions, our humanity cannot work collectively towards greatness. So we have to engage in discussions, and constructive criticism is good. Calling people out sometimes on what they're doing should not make them feel like they're being threatened. Rather, it's an opportunity for them to say, thank you for allowing me to align myself to be the best that I can be to serve you in the way that I'm supposed to serve you. It's a very simple thing. We cannot say that whoever's in the White House is our enemy or we are enemies to them. No, it doesn't matter if it's a Democrat, a Republican, someone I elected or not. They have a job to serve. Our goal is to help them serve us well and serve the world well. That being said, if there is policies that are being formed through the aid or assistance of our nation, and we see it to be wrong, those are policies that can be discussed, but it should not be termed as if we are taking down the people themselves. So by criticizing certain Israeli policies or Afghani policies or Saudi policies or British policies doesn't mean we're anti-Semitic or we are Islamophobic or we are anti British or whatever else, it doesn't mean that. It's a discussion. But Carl, at the same time, I need us to hold our feet to the fire and ask the simple question: where have we shown that level of unity and connection and collaboration with our Jewish brethren, even here in America, as we have with the Christian brothers and sisters? We haven't. So when there is already a distance and there is somewhat of a void, that we're not engaging with the Jewish community because of how certain people feel of certain policies and certain decisions being made politically, why are those stopping us from engaging with each other? Because Allah Himself describes them as, "O people of the book." So He is telling us they are people of the book, and you are people of the book also. Why is there a perceived, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, is there a perceived distance, illness, hatred against the Jewish brethren more so than there are against the Christian brethren? And of course, there shouldn't be any. Look, we have our differences in our faith, but that differences does not call for us to disrespect someone. We can engage, we can discuss. I'll give you an example. I went to see the rabbi this week in Richardson. An appointment was set up for me to go meet her. An amazing soul. We spoke for an hour, and after I came home, she texted me. She's like, "I'm so sorry I forgot to ask you. My husband and I were having a discussion over lunch. You're new in this community. You and your family must be going through a lot. Come over to our house for lunch." And that shocked me. And I couldn't even respond. I'm like, I would have never thought in 100 years a person I meet for 1 hour would invite me over for lunch. And she's persistent. I responded after 2 days and telling her, thank you so much for the invitation. Look through my dates. This is the only day available. She responded, no, I'm sorry, I'll be traveling, but can we look at the month after? And she's persistent. It's coming from her heart. Why? Because why can't we help each other? If a traveler traveled through Makkah and it was a pagan, or there were a Jewish, or forget Makkah, Medina, when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was there, did they say, hey, 1 second, show us your faith ID card, and based on that, we'll tell you what hospitality perks are available for you, and if there aren't any, then just skip this rest stop and move on 500 kilometers south to Makkah? No, they didn't do that. Why are we so ill? Why is it perceived, Carl, that we harbor illness against the Jewish brethren more over than we do with anyone else? I think that also plays in to the dynamics of what's playing out. What's your thoughts on that?
And oddly enough, I feel like I have an answer to that one. Because this goes back to what you and I have talked about almost every single episode, especially early on, and all the back episodes can be found at vennnetwork.org. Culture. What happens is, in communities, culture gets injected into the faith, and people assume that this is the way it is, this is reality, this is life, this is what Muslims believe, when in actuality, that's a cultural thing, and we don't actually believe that, and we don't actually treat people bad, but again, culture has been injected, and this is what we're stuck with. We're not stuck with, but this is what we end up with.
So let me answer that and explain to you. Most cultures have created a perception, even here in America, that the Jews are either in America or in Israel, and because there's support for Israel by Americans, and the Jews are doing something. And I'm not here saying that there's no lobbies and there's no work and whatever else. I'm not going to get into politics today. Remember, we're talking about separation of church and state. The state has its methods. If you want to change the methods, there are ways to do that, and there's legal, lawful ways to do that. But you have to do that with an open heart and an open mind. You can't go into politics with an agenda or with a vendetta. It's not going to help you, and I'll tell you, Allah's not going to help you in that. When it comes to church, because politics was the perceived factor that caused this drift, this rift between the Jewish community and the Muslim, let it be known that the Muslim community opened their doors in Palestine to Jews many years ago. They opened their doors in Albania. They opened their doors in different places when the Holocaust was occurring. Jews are still residing in Iran. Yes, hear me out. Iran. Jews have their land in Saudi Arabia. There are places that are still belonging to the Jewish faith. Why? To the people of the Jewish community, because it's more than what you and I perceive it to be. Jews have opened their synagogues when the Muslims' mosques were burned down. Muslims have opened their mosques to the Jewish community when Jewish synagogues were threatened. We cannot show and display love and unity superficially and then actually hold vendetta with each other. When the Muslims are helping the Jews, restore the gravestones after they're being knocked down, and the Jewish community help the Muslims after a mosque has been burned down, for God's sakes, brothers and sisters, wake up and smell the coffee. There is no hatred and animosity. There is nothing. Why are we making it to be? And if you're harboring it despite advocating for these beautiful acts of togetherness and brotherhood and sisterhood, but then you're on the same flip side, you are against the people that are doing it, you need to have a reality check. You really need to have a reality check. Carl?
I don't know what to say. Am I supposed to follow that with something? Because that was pretty on the nose.
I don't know, Carl. It's frustrating because, if we are going to continue down this path and children are going to grow up believing that Muslims are anti-Semitic, and and they call for inclusion, and they call for love, and they call for exemplifying good character. It's not looking good. It's not looking good because we have to set the record straight. Raw Islam with Imam Azhar and Brother Carl Dodge is a very simple concept. We will peel away on the onion of culture, stigma, phobias that surround the faith of Islam to bring out the truth of it. Where you want to take it, what you want to do with it is your call, but it's our duty, it's my duty first and foremost as a scholar to make sure we set the record straight in regards to these issues. So my closing remarks tonight on this is, because this could be a very long conversation, is that Sister Ilhan Omar has allowed her emotions to take her when it came to this issue, and there was a more wisdomatic route to take in regards to this issue, especially when Muslims are looked upon as being anti-Semitic and being haters of the Jewish community because of the politics that continue to play out in the Israeli and Palestine region. So, we need to reinforce as a Muslim community that there is no animosity harbored against any people of any background, of any faith, of any race, of any way. It's not part of our faith, and especially those who are the people of the book. We're not saying come together and just sing kumbaya and say everything is fine. No, if we don't have if we don't have those relationship building processes, then we cannot have those discussions, which are the elephant in the room, preventing us from moving together here where we live and doing great things together. We need to address the elephant in the room. We have to address the politics. We have to address the fear and the phobias, but that can only be done when you have an open-hearted discussion and a relationship building process with people who are outside of your faith. And so it's a very simple concept, Carl, and that is that the religion did not advocate for this. The politics continue to play out. There's a legal process of how we address the political game, and there is a religious obligation of how we uphold what Islam stands for. So clearly tonight, I think we could go from here knowing that Islam does not promote anti-Semitism, xenophobia, or any other type of phobia, fear, or hatred towards anyone. Politics will continue to be politics. Don't mix the two. And thirdly, to the Muslim community, talk is cheap. Your actions need to prove it more than it is your words. And instead of continuing with these Twitter discussions and these online discussions and chats and comments on articles that are being written either on Huffington Post or by the Washington Post or by the New York Times or whatever else, let's really fix the problems here. There's so many problems in America right now that are hurting people. Literally, when I say hurting, it's hurting people. It's hurting them bad. And we're wasting the last 2 days about this. She has issued an apology. I think as good American citizens, we take the apology and we move forward in a constructive fashion. If not, a government shutdown is looming. If not, $5 billion, I think, is trying to go for a wall. If not, food stamps are being cut. If not, healthcare costs are going up. If not, people are going to be working 3 and 4 jobs to make a decent living and to get food on the table. To me, here in America, right now, these are bigger issues. Carl?
So, whereas we are at the 35-minute mark, and Imam Azhar has given his closing remarks, I actually want to change the topic completely as we close out the show here. Because I ran a Twitter poll last week because Facebook just isn't showing us the love and respect and joy that it used to show us. And I know things have changed, and I know topics aren't working, and I know hashtags aren't what they were, and Facebook is going through their own internal struggles and their own internal issues with a lot of things. If anybody watched the Facebook at 15 on CNN this weekend, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But this Twitter poll that I ran, I think it said, I think it was 70%-ish. I think it was 70% of you that took this poll said that you'd be willing to join us on YouTube Live. So I would like to just throw this out there that I'm thinking about trying to do this on YouTube Live next week. So if you're not following us on YouTube and you're not subscribed to our channel, I'll post the link in the comments down below. But definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel, because for the 70% of you that said you'd be willing to drop us on YouTube or watch us on YouTube and join us there, I'd like to encourage you to come join us, because we may be over there very soon, and we'll see what happens over there. Because, like I said, I'm not feeling this Facebook, and it's not you guys. I know for a fact that it's what YouTube is doing that is causing the, or what Facebook is doing that's causing the issues. So I just want to put that out there. Be on the lookout for that. Be on keep an eye on our Twitter account. Keep an eye on our Facebook page, because we may be over there testing it out one night. So, bam. There's that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of another show. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us. I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in live. If you are watching this in perpetuity, I would like to say thank you very much. We enjoy your interactions. We enjoy your comment. I'm realizing right now that I screwed up the text and the graphic right here, that it should say Raw Islam at VennNetwork.org, but that's okay. You can always find us on Twitter at just at Venn Network, and you can email us at rawislam@VennNetwork.org. You can head over to VennNetwork.org, where you can find this and other shows. You can also find cool swag like this, and you can find a link to our Patreon page, where you can help support the network, support the shows, and support the hosts, so that we can bring more wonderful content like this to more people around the world, so that we can help spread the information, and we can help peel away the layers of the onion to expose the root of Islam and what it really meant and why it was really sent to us through the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. And that, ladies and gentlemen, brings us to the end of another episode. I will say thank you to Imam Azhar for joining us this evening, as it's his show, and it'd be really weird to have Raw Islam with Imam Azhar without Imam Azhar. And until next week, we will say, Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.